Think about the last time you drove somewhere in the rain. You reached out, you hit the wipers, didn't think anything about it. You made a left turn, flicked the turn signal, and the car behind you slowed down because your brake lights told it to. None of that's a big deal, and that's the point. Those features are so seamless, so automatic, that we never stop to wonder where they came from. The windshield wiper, the turn signal, the brake signal, all invented by women. Now, I want to tell you about 4 women across the automotive industry whose names most people have never heard of. Hi, everybody. I'm Shar, and it's Women's History Month, and I want to tell you about Mary Anderson, Florence Lawrence, Dorothée Pullinger, and Patrice Banks. In 1903, Mary Anderson's riding a streetcar in New York City. It's snowing hard, and she's watching the driver do something that most people around her just are accepting as normal. He stops the car, gets out, walks to the front, and wipes the windshield with his bare hands. He gets back in, drives 3 more blocks, then stops again. Every time the snow builds up enough that he can't see, he has to stop, get out, and wipe it by hand. Now, Mary Anderson is watching this and thinking something that probably most people else at that moment weren't thinking. That's a problem we can solve. Now, here's what I love about Mary's story. She's not an engineer, and she definitely wasn't a mechanic. She's a real estate developer from Birmingham, Alabama, and she built the Fairmont Apartments, she ran a cattle ranch, and operated a vineyard. She is a businesswoman with a practical mind and a brain that cannot watch an inefficiency for 30 seconds without starting to design around it. So she goes home, she designs a device, a lever mounted inside the vehicle that controls a spring-loaded arm with a blade and a rubber blade on the outside of the windshield. Now you pull the lever and the blade sweeps across the glass and clears the snow with a counterweight that keeps it in contact with the surface. And it's removable, so drivers can take it off when the weather clears. Then on November 10th of 1903, the United States gave her a patent number 743,801 for a window cleaning device for electric cars and other vehicles. She has just invented the windshield wiper. She then tries to sell the rights. She approaches a Canadian manufacturing firm called Denning and Eckenstein. Their reply comes back in writing, and it basically says, "We don't believe this is enough commercial value to be worth selling." Basically, they passed. Now you see, in 1903, cars were still a luxury item. Henry Ford hadn't built the Model T yet, and the infrastructure for mass automobile adoption simply didn't exist. Those manufacturers genuinely couldn't picture a world where millions of people would need to see through a windshield every single day in the rain, in the snow, or at highway speeds. They just couldn't see it. But Mary Anderson already had. Her patent eventually expired in 1920. And here's the thing about timing. By the time the automotive industry scaled up enough that every driver on every road needed a windshield wiper, her legal protection was already gone. The industry wasn't ready when she had the patent. By the time the industry was ready, her patent was dead. Any manufacturer could build on her design now for free, and they did. There was no compensation, no licensing arrangement, no formal acknowledgement. Now, Mary lived until 1953, and she watched windshield wipers become the standard on every vehicle on Earth, and she received nothing from the invention she built. By 1913, before her patent even expired, wipers were already starting to become the standard in most vehicles. By 1922, Cadillac was building them in permanently, and the rest of the industry soon followed. She was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2011, nearly 60 years after her death. Now today, windshield wipers are on every car, every truck, bus, tractor, aircraft on the planet. Mary Anderson's story is what I call the chute. Now let me explain what that means. The chute in the cash system, which is chute attach, stay, and heart is about mental preparation, clearing the noise, and seeing the real situation before you act. Now, the cash checklist asks, is it fact or is it assumption? What's the real situation? And what's the one thing you can control? Now, Mary Anderson ran that checklist before any of us even had words for it. She looked at that streetcar driver and didn't see an inconvenience. She saw a solvable problem in her mind and was clear enough to see what was real, and she was disciplined enough to act on it before the gate even opened. That's the shoot. If your mind is crowded, you can't lead. Mary cleared her mind and acted on her idea. Now, in my last Women's History Month video, I talked about Hedy Lamarr. She was a famous actress who was once called the most beautiful woman in the world. She invented a frequency hopping device that could have changed the timeline of World War II. The woman who invented turn signals was also a movie star. Florence Lawrence was one of the most famous women in the world in 1914. A silent film actress, she made nearly 300 films and was known as the Biograph Girl. She was the first actress ever credited by name on screen. And she's obsessed with cars. Not in the casual, I enjoy driving kind of sense. Florence Lawrence was a gearhead. She worked on her own vehicles. She understood how they operated at a mechanical level. And she once said, "A car to me is something that is almost human. Something that responds to kindness, understanding, and care, just like people do." Now, her father was a carriage maker, so I don't know, maybe it was in the blood. But whatever the source, Florence Lawrence brings a level of technical depth to automobiles that people around her simply hadn't developed, because most of them hadn't put in the hours she had working on them, thinking about them, and genuinely caring about how the machines operate. And in 1914, she identifies two safety problems that nobody else had solved. First, when a car is about to turn, nobody behind it knows which direction it's going. Drivers would communicate with hand signals out the window, or they just wouldn't communicate at all, and everyone just hopes for the best. Second, when a car is braking, nobody behind it got any warning. So she decided to build solutions to both. Her first invention she called the auto signaling arm. It was a mechanical flag mounted on the rear bumper, controlled by push buttons near the driver's seat. The left button would raise a flag on the left, and the right button would raise a flag on the right. Now, drivers can see where you're going before you even turned. Now, her second invention was a brake signal. When the driver pressed the foot brake, a sign reading "stop" would flip up from the rear bumper, visible to every driver behind you. Now, the turn signal and brake indicator, both invented in 1914 by movie actors who could not stop thinking about how cars could communicate to each other. Florence Lawrence never patented these inventions. Now, her mother would later try to file patents after the fact, but just couldn't make it work. By 1939, Buick introduced the electric turn signals as standard across their entire line, calling it the flashway directional signal. And by the 1960s, turn signals and brake lights were legally required safety features on every vehicle in the United States. Now, Florence Lawrence died in 1938, and her inventions outlived her by decades, on every car, on every road, all over the world. Florence Lawrence shows us attach. Now, the world saw a movie star, the most famous actress of her era. What they didn't see was a woman who regularly had her hands under the hood of her own car, learning how it worked, building real mechanical knowledge the way most people in her position simply never would have been caught doing. That's the rope check. That's the toolbox integrity. She didn't see a safety problem on the road and go find someone else to solve it. She leaned into what she knew, the years she had spent getting her hands dirty. That was her gear. It was her ready. So when she sat down to design the turn signal and the brake indicator, she wasn't guessing. She was working from a foundation she had built herself. Attach wasn't about the title or your credentials. It was about whether your gear is actually ready when the gate opens. And hers was. Now, let's move to Scotland in 1920. The war had just ended. A munitions factory near Kirkcudbright in southern Scotland needs a new purpose. A 26-year-old engineer named Dorothée Pullinger had an idea. Convert it. Convert it to make cars designed for women, built by women, marketed to women. The company is renamed Galloway Motors Limited. Dorothée becomes its director and manager. Now, let me tell you a little bit about who she is by this point, because she just didn't stumble into this role. She had been in the automotive industry since she was 16, starting as a draft person at Errol Johnson, the oldest and largest Scottish car manufacturer, where her father was a managing director. When World War II began, she stepped into something remarkable. She became a lady superintendent of a munitions factory at Barrow-in-Furness, responsible for the management and welfare of approximately 7,000 female workers producing explosive shells for the war effort. 7,000 people, and she's in her early 20s. She introduces a canteen system to feed the workers. She builds an apprenticeship program, manages logistics, personnel, and production at the scale most people will never see. And in 1920, she's awarded the MBE. That's a member of the Order of British Empire for her wartime service. She takes all of that and then decides to build Galloway Motors. She and her father developed Galloway 1020. That was a vehicle deliberately engineered with female drivers in mind. A smaller steering wheel, a raised seat for better visibility, lowered dashboard, and a gear lever repositioned between the driver and the passenger. Better legroom, better storage, and one of the first cars to include a rear view mirror as standard. The factory employs largely female work base, and Dorothée even runs an engineering college attached to the factory, a 3-year apprenticeship program for women. The factory adopts the colors of the suffragists. They even built tennis courts on the roof for the employees. And in 1921, a trade publication describes the Galloway as a car built by ladies for those of their own sex. And that same year, Dorothée Pullinger becomes the first woman ever elected as a full member of the Institution of Automobile Engineers. Now, they initially offered her an associate membership, and she declined because she knew her worth. She held out for a full membership and got it. Now, about 4,000 Galloways are produced before the brand is eventually absorbed into a larger company. She then goes on to race competitively and wins the Scottish 6-day car trial in 1924, driving a Galloway. Dorothée manages 13 factories during World War II and serves on the government committee to recruit women into engineering. She eventually retires to Guernsey, where she is reported to have drive her old Galloway around the island with enthusiastic disregard for the highway code. Now, Dorothée lived to 92, and she was inducted into the Scottish Engineering Hall of Fame back in 2012. Dorothée Pullinger is a great example of stay. It's not just about grinding through, it's about finding your middle when the chaos hits. Dorothée had chaos from every direction, from leading 7,000 workers in a munitions plant during the war to bucking at an institution that tried to give her a lesser membership, a factory closure, and a company that eventually absorbed her brand. And she found her center every single time. She didn't lean into the resistance, and she didn't lean away from it. She used it. That friction made her grip tighter. She stayed in the middle when most people would have stepped back. Now, if you're leaning, you're leaving. Dorothée never leaned, and that was back in 1921. Now, let's fast forward to 2012. Patrice Banks is a materials science engineer at DuPont. She runs her own lab as a six-figure salary, and by every conventional measure, she has made it. She also, by her own description, called herself an auto airhead. She knows nothing about her car. Dashboard lights send her into a spiral. Every trip to the mechanic leaves her unsure whether she's being told what she actually needs or what someone wants to sell her. She knows she's not the only one that feels that way. So she starts looking at the numbers. Women make up over half of all licensed drivers in the United States. Women influence the majority of car purchases, and women spend approximately $200 billion annually on vehicles and repairs. Women are the number one customer in the automotive industry. And at that time, fewer than 2% of automotive mechanics are women. The industry's biggest customers had almost no representation among the people doing the work. So she goes looking for a female mechanic in the Philadelphia area. And she can't find one. And instead of accepting that as the end of the story, she does the thing that changes her entire life. She enrolls in automotive technology school at Delaware Technical Community College. At night, after days at DuPont, she learns how to work on cars and she becomes a certified mechanic. In 2013, Girls Automotive Clinic is born. She starts running free car care workshops for women at a West Philadelphia repair shop, teaching the basics of how to talk to a mechanic, how to read a repair estimate, what a dashboard light actually means. Sometimes nobody showed up. Sometimes two people would show up. But she keeps going. 4 years later, in January 2017, Girls Auto Clinic Repair Center opens in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. A full-service auto repair shop staffed by women mechanics, and inside a beauty lounge, manicures, pedicures, blowouts. Because if the experience was going to be different, Patrice decided it was going to be different in every way. Her logo, a red stiletto with a crescent wrench for the heel. The movement she builds is called She-Canic, a female of any age who has mastered the mechanics of yes I can, and then used them to get to yes I did. She publishes the Girls Auto Clinic Glove Box Guide, which is picked up by Simon & Schuster. She gets covered by NPR, Time, The Washington Post, Good Morning America, Glamour, and Car and Driver. She partners with Ford, Honda, Dell, and the Girl Scouts. She then becomes a founding member of the Women of Color Automotive Network. And in 2025, Patrice is inducted into the African American Automotive Association Hall of Fame. Today, the She-Canic Foundation continues expanding, accessing auto care education for women of all ages and all backgrounds. 1921 to 2012. 92 years apart, we saw Dorothée Pullinger create an all-women car company designed for women, built by women, run by women in Scotland, to Patrice Banks, who created an all-woman automotive operation serving women, staffed by women, built by a woman in Pennsylvania. Neither of them knew about each other. Neither of them was following a blueprint. Both of them looked at the automotive industry, saw the same gap, and said, I'm going to fix that myself. And both of them built the whole thing from the ground up. That's hard. It's about try. Try is the fuel. It's what makes the engines run when the sparks fly. Patrice Banks deleted her exit strategy the day she enrolled in automotive school. She had every reason to stay at DuPont, the salary, the lab, the career track she'd already built. She removed all of it, and then she held workshops in parking lots when nobody showed up. The try in her tank didn't run out because she'd already committed past the point of turning back. That's what it means to give the nod. You're ready to stay on until the whistle, no matter what happens in those 8 seconds. 4 women, 120 years. Mary Anderson cleared the mind and saw the solution nobody else was looking for. Florence Lawrence, to her, the world saw a red carpet. She saw a cylinder head and got her hands dirty and built the knowledge and leaned into it when it mattered. Dorothée Pullinger found her center in the middle of chaos and never leaned out. Patrice Banks deleted the exit strategy and kept the engine running on try alone. That's the cash system in real life. Not a formula, not a shortcut. A way of showing up prepared, equipped, centered, committed, no matter what industry you're in or what room you're walking into. These 4 women didn't have a playbook. They just refused to wait for one. If their stories resonated with you, I put together a free pre-ride checklist at the8secondlife.com. It walks you through all 4 stages before your next high-stakes moment. The link is in the description. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because we can't ride alone. Thank you, everybody. I'm Shar. Stay in the middle.